Hey, you're listening to Eric Stacy's Seeing Red podcast on YouTube and Spreaker and other places that you can find it, and I hope you do. This is episode 6. Thanks everybody for joining me. It's been a little longer than I wanted between podcasts, and I do apologize. It's been a crazy busy month with a lot going on. I promise I'll start to make these podcasts shorter in time span between each episode. Not to mention the fact that I'm trying to put out a good quality podcast, but also dealing with the fact that Facebook is always trying to suspend me for telling the truth. And I believe that my channel here on YouTube is reporting, I know for a fact that they're reporting the amount of listenership the show gets way low compared to what it really is getting. I have independent sources keeping track of subscriptions and comments and listenership, and the listenership is from episode to episode is, let's say it's at least minimum between 200 and 300. So I love when they try to put that there's 68 listeners in the first 24 hours, but then all of a sudden after 24 hours it slows down to only 10 in the next 3 days. You can do the math and see that there's something wrong with that. They're obviously, like I've said before, trying to make the show not happen, not be a success. But this is where success comes from. It comes from the ground up. It comes from people deciding that they're going to take the fight on themselves and do all they can to see this country stay the great country that it's always been. And right now it needs help real bad. With that said, these are short podcasts, so I want to get right into my first point. I was down at Walgreens today recently picking something up, and I noticed this flyer that said starting blah, 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 and there was a date coming up soon. It said starting on this date, anyone who cannot show ID that says they're not 21 can no longer buy tobacco products. And I thought to myself, God, that's pretty interesting. I thought that the people of Nevada, that the voters had voted in as the legal age you can buy tobacco products as 18. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So Walgreens thinks that they're going to play God, that they know better than the voters and the politicians of the state of Nevada, and that they're going to independently make up their own rules. So when I got to the front, I said, what's the legal limit? What's the legal age for buying tobacco products in Nevada? And the lady said, well, here it's going to be 18. And I said, I know here, I read your flyer, but what's the state limit? What's the state law? Nevada, the state law is 21 and over. You can purchase tobacco products. And I thought, oh, well, what a nice socialist dictatorship little move of yours on your part to tell us that you know better than the voters of Nevada and the citizens of Nevada, that you know better than us what's good for us. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not promoting smoking at all. But I think it's really dangerous. I think it sets a dangerous precedent when big corporations start to manipulate the already voted in rules and tell us how we're supposed to live our lives. There's far too much of that going on, folks. And big corporations count on the apathy of the everyday American. Oh, I've got a busy day. I've got meetings today. I've got to do this. I've got to walk the dog. I've got to do this. I've got to water my plants. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to book my vacation. And they all count on the fact that you aren't going to see what's going on in everyday life. But in everyday life, what is going on is the liberals and the left wing are encroaching on the way we live, and they're trying to tell us every day how we can dress, what we can eat, what we can or can't smoke, what we can do with our own lives. And America was built on the principles of independence, of freedom of speech, of freedom of thought, of freedom of religion, and it sets a very dangerous precedent that the Democrats think, oh, well, I'm voted in. I got voted in, so now I must represent everybody and I can do whatever the heck I want without answering to anybody. And that's what they're doing, and it's really dangerous. And today it may be telling you that even though the state says you have to be 18 and over to smoke, and some big corporation decides, no, we're going to change that to 21 and change a state law. Today it may be about smoking, and again, I'm not promoting smoking. It's horrible for you, and I hope no one starts. But that's everybody's individual choice, what they do with their bodies and their lives. And when big government starts to tell us how to live our lives and what we can and can't do, it's damn dangerous, and it sets a huge precedent. And there's too much of this big corporations trying to tell us how to think, how to do things, influence our lives. Another example, I've told people, subscribe to Epic Times. It's a great paper. It's full of fact, and it's the only paper that tells the truth these days, as far as I'm concerned. There's been some interesting articles done by some researchers in relations to Epic Times recently that says that Google will actively interfere in the 2020 elections. Now, I had read somewhere previously that said Google was responsible for at least 2.6 million votes towards Hillary Clinton's way in the last election, but they're expecting that number to go 4 times as high with this next election. Dr. Robert Epstein, he's a senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology, basically told the Epic Times that Google has access to a number of powerful, as he called it, powerful manipulation methods. And if you want to know more about those methods, do the research, look it up. I have a short podcast, and I'm not here to individually get into each method, so go read about it. If you care, go read about how Google's trying to influence this election, how they're trying to make sure that no Republicans succeed, how they're trying to make sure that Donald Trump does not get reelected. And I must say, if there's any hero to come out of that sad story, his name is Zach Voorhees. He was a software engineer at Google, and he recently provided Project Veritas with over 1,000 documents proving that Google secretly either boosts or demotes content based on its left-wing agenda and what it thinks the public should or should not know. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but basically, just like Walgreens is telling you who can and who can't smoke, if you're over 18, even though the state says and the voters have said you can smoke, they've decided if you're not 21, you can't smoke. Well, here's another big corporation, an even bigger, more scary corporation that's very, they don't hide the fact that it's a left-wing agenda, that they're completely from the liberal left-wing agenda, probably working off George Soros's billions of dollars and their own money. Now they're trying to influence this election in a major way, and they're basically, as the research says there, they're deciding what stories they're going to promote and which ones they're going to demote and not promote, not let you see. Because they want you to think a certain way. They don't want you to have all the facts. They don't want you to know everything that's going on. They want you to know what they want you to know, period. And that's Google, that's Facebook, that's YouTube, that's Twitter, and they're all doing the same thing. And that's why I've been urging people for so long, please, if you want the truth, if you want a social media site where free speech and free ideas are still you're still able to talk about your ideas and still express your anger towards what's going on in government, go to Parler.com. Please go to Parler, Parler.com, and sign up. If you want to go to the sites and the places where freedom and free thought and free ideas are still expressed, go to Parler.com. Subscribe to Epic Times, the newspaper, EPOCH Times. You can get it in the old-fashioned hard copy, like I said. I like to read it while I'm having my coffee. You can get it online, or you can get both. So I just wanted to get into those two issues as examples of what's going on today with corporations trying to tell us how we can think and how we can't think. I'm going to take a step back really quickly. This happened a while ago, but it happened after my last podcast. These mass shootings that happened recently. What I find very interesting is the last 3 mass shootings, and a mass shooting is defined as a shooting where over 4 people were killed. The last 3 mass shootings that were in the news was the Garlic Festival in California, then came El Paso, and then came Dayton. Initially, the Democrats jumped on all 3 of these and started, making Trump the bad guy and saying that Trump has racist rhetoric and that his hateful words contributed to this violence. And isn't it funny and isn't it interesting how after a little bit of research, people found out that the Garlic Festival shooter and the Dayton shooter were both registered Democrats. The shooter in at the Garlic Festival, his name was Santino William Ligon, was a registered Democrat and a Bernie Sanders fan. And he had urged people on his manifesto prior to the shooting to read the 19th century book, Might is Right. Well, that book promotes racial violence and anti-Semitism. So there you go. Bernie Sanders fan, registered Democrat, promoting a book that promotes racial violence and anti-Semitism. The Dayton shooter, Connor Betts, also a registered Democrat, was a huge Elizabeth Warren fan and had an obsession with violence and mass shootings. Big surprise. And by the way, of the three shooters, the only one that didn't wear body armor, the only one that gave up and surrendered, was the El Paso shooter. The other two shooters died at the hands of police and wore body armor. So I'm not saying that any one of those three is less or more twisted than the other. They're all twisted, evil, bad people. But isn't it interesting that two of the three that the Democrats tried to paint as this is Trump's fault, and they loved Trump, and they're white supremacists. Isn't it funny how they turned out to be registered Democrats and fans of Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and wore body armor and were extremely into racial violence and anti-Semitism and segregation. And isn't it interesting that the only story of the three that's still being tossed around out there in the media is the El Paso shooting? Again, people, don't be sold by what the lying fake mass media is trying to sell you, because it's all a bunch of bullshit. Don't let people manipulate you because people are so apathetic and so into their daily lives that they can't see past the end of their nose and make more sense of what's going on in this country. But what's going on in this country is Donald Trump is trying to fight to keep this country the great country it was for over 250 years. And the Democrats are trying to tie in with the socialists and with the Marxists and with the fascists, and they're trying to kill what was once a great country. There's schools in this country now that will no longer allow the American flag to be flown, that will no longer allow the Pledge of Allegiance to be said. This is wrong, people. This is absolutely wrong. When I went to school, we said the Pledge of Allegiance every day, standing in front of the flag, and this was a great, strong, awesome country, and it still can be. But let me tell you, if the Democrats ever get near the White House, if they ever get the numbers in the Senate, we're screwed. What we need to do is reelect Donald Trump, keep the power in the Senate, and kick out those idiots like AOC, like Ilhan Omar, like all those terrorists that don't give one hoot about this country, that are, in particular, Ilhan Omar and Rashid Tlaib are only there to try to promote Palestinian statehood. What does that have to do with America? What does that have to do with making America great? If you want to promote Palestinian statehood, then go to Palestine. Go get onto the go to Palestine and get on their go get on their political party and do what you got to do. But don't pretend to be somebody who cares about this country, because you don't. You don't care about America. You don't care about Israel. You're a bunch of anti-Semitic thugs. You shouldn't be in Congress. And we need to start taking over these parts of America that were sold so quickly in the last election in 2018 when people weren't paying attention. We need to pay attention. We need to put up good candidates and get rid of these anti-American haters and start restoring America's greatness again. I promise you I will make a 7th episode. It will come out sooner than the 6th. In the meantime, do your research, look at what's happening, read Epic Times, sign up at Parler.com, and get to being an American. Be a soldier for America, whatever that means in your own way. Find reasons find things that you can do to fight for this country and make this country the once great country it was. Don't let it fall into the hands of these evil, left-wing, liberal, socialist Democrats, because they will ruin this country and it will affect your life directly. Trust me on that. All right? Until then, you've been listening to episode 6 of Eric Stacy's Seeing Red podcast. I will see you all very shortly. God bless America. I love you all. Amen. Stay tuned for episode 7 of Seeing Red, coming real soon on Eric Stacy's YouTube channel.